So today we're going to talk about the story of Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's a town that wasn't just abandoned. It was almost completely erased from existence because of one single catastrophic mistake. This is a crazy story of fire, of failure, and of a community that was literally consumed from the ground up.
And get this, for over 60 years, an unstoppable fire has been burning underneath what used to be a bustling American town. It is still burning right now as you listen to this, and scientists, they think it's going to keep burning for centuries more.
It just begs this incredible question, right? How did something so normal, so routine, just burning some trash at the local landfill, how did that ignite an inferno that would eventually wipe an entire town clean off the map? Well, that's the mystery we are going to unpack today.
So let's start with what Centralia is like today. If you go there, it is a seriously surreal experience. It's not just that it's empty. There's this feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, you know? Like you're standing on a wound in the earth that just won't heal.
People have taken to calling it America's Chernobyl. It's a place that's now just defined by its ruins, by these empty streets and this really eerie sight of smoke just seeping out of cracks in the ground. It's so gone that the US government actually took away its zip code. I mean, think about that. Officially, Centralia, Pennsylvania just doesn't exist anymore. But here's the thing. Before it became this creepy ghost town, Centralia was alive. It was doing well. And to really get what was lost here, we have to look at what this community was like before the fire ever started. You know, back in the early 1960s, Centralia was your classic American coal town. It was small, it was peaceful, pretty prosperous, and its future seemed totally secure, built on these massive veins of anthracite coal. But today, well, only a few people are left, literally living on top of the very same coal that is now destroying their town. So, how did this all kick off? Well, it wasn't some big mining accident, and it wasn't a natural disaster. Now, it all started with a simple, everyday task that went horribly, horribly wrong.
It all started on May 27, 1962. The local firefighters were doing a controlled burn at the town landfill. They lit the trash, let it burn down, and then they hosed it down. They thought, okay, job done. But the next day, the fire was back. So they hit it again, this time with more water, even bulldozers. But on the third day, it reignited again. And that's when they knew they had a much bigger problem. They had to start digging.
And what they found was an absolute nightmare. See, the landfill was in an old, abandoned strip mine pit. So the fire hadn't just been smoldering in the garbage. It had found its way into an exposed vein of anthracite coal. And that vein was basically a direct fuse leading right into the massive labyrinth of mining tunnels that snaked for miles underneath the entire town. A simple trash fire had just become a mine fire.
Now you have to understand, a coal mine fire is not like a forest fire. It's not even like an oil well fire. It is a completely different kind of beast. And to really get why Centralia was so completely doomed, you have to understand the physics of what was happening down there. A coal seam fire is exactly what it sounds like. The ground itself is on fire. The coal deposit is the fuel. And when you've got miles of tunnels packed with a fuel source that can burn for centuries, yeah, your standard firefighting techniques just aren't going to cut it. Let's put it this way. Think about a huge oil well fire. As crazy as those are, they're basically burning from a single point. If you can cap that point, you cut off the fuel. But a mine fire, it's a sprawling horizontal maze. It's not one fire. It's like thousands of little fires, all slowly creeping through this massive underground network. There's no single source you can just turn off. It had everything it needed to burn forever. First, a practically endless supply of fuel, centuries worth of coal. Second, a constant supply of oxygen, fed through thousands of little cracks in the ground and old mine shafts. And its scale was so immense, you could never flood it. You'd have to fill every single tunnel, and even then, one dry spot could just reignite the whole thing. It was this slow, patient, and basically immortal fire. But here's the thing, the fire's physics, that was only half the story. The other half was just a catastrophic failure of human response. It was marked by years of indecision, of bureaucratic infighting, and just inaction. Experts all agree that in those first few days, they could have stopped it. They could have just aggressively dug out the burning coal. But instead of taking immediate action, the town council and the fire department just argued over who was to blame and who was going to pay for it. Contractors were hired, then they quit. Plans were made that were way too expensive, and crucial months were wasted appealing to a state government that just didn't get how serious this was.
So while the humans up top were arguing, the fire down below just kept advancing. The ground actually got warm to the touch. In the winter, snow would melt in these bizarre patterns on people's lawns. You could plant a garden in January. But then the really bad stuff started. Toxic gases like carbon monoxide started seeping into basements. The ground started to crack and sink, opening up these smoking holes in backyards and right in the middle of the highway. And this went on for 20 years. Can you imagine? The town was just slowly dying. And finally, in the early 1980s, the problem got so bad that it landed on the desk of the U.S. Congress. They would be the ones to deliver the final verdict. Now, just think about the cost of all that waiting. Back in 1962, experts figured that digging out the fire would have cost around $50,000. I mean, that's a lot for a small town, sure, but it was totally manageable. 22 years later, after that fire had spread for miles and miles, the U.S. Bureau of Mines estimated the cost to put it out had ballooned to over $660 million. And this right here, this brings us to the cold, hard logic that sealed Centralia's fate. When Congress was faced with that astronomical figure, they made a purely economic decision.
I mean, the choice was brutal, but it was simple math. Why spend $660 million to fight a fire you might not even win when you could just buy every single property, pay every resident to leave, and demolish the whole town for just $42 million? The math was simple, and the decision was clear.
And just like that, in 1984, Congress set aside the money for a voluntary relocation. Most of the residents took the buyout. Their homes were bulldozed, the streets were left empty, and the town of Centralia was officially declared dead, left to the fire that still burns beneath it to this day. It just leaves us with this lingering question, doesn't it? Who is really to blame here? Was it the firefighters who lit the match, the town officials who delayed and argued, or was this whole thing just an unstoppable force of nature from the moment it sparked? The tragedy of Centralia, it's not just about a fire. It's this stark reminder of how quickly a small problem, when it's met with indecision and inaction, can become a catastrophe that consumes everything.